The auctioneer had 19 vocal cords and a smile like split fruit. Each chord vibrated with a different frequency, creating a harmony that made the word Lot 47F sound like a hymn and a threat in equal measure. The platform he stood on pulsed beneath him, living like everything on Tysark's V. The jellyfish station breathed through translucent ceilings, and its atmosphere smelled of citrus and battery acid. It floated in orbit like a chandelier someone forgot to clean. 5 human girls stood in a line, ankles cuffed with thin, iridescent rings. Their dresses were variations on the same theme: shimmering gauze, high slits, low collars. Some alien stylus idea of what would excite a room full of invertebrates and aristocratic parasites. The 4th girl, a redhead with a broken shoe strap, stood with her chin high, her bare foot bleeding where glass from the last bidder's tantrum had cut her. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She stared straight ahead like she was counting every breath the auctioneer took. No one in the crowd noticed the blood. Most didn't even understand the significance of it. Bleeding, to them, was vulgar, uncivilized. The bidding crowd, slime-slick mollusks in gem-crusted robes, spindly insectoids perched on carved bone thrones, and a few noble bots hissing softly through chrome masks, watched the girls like wine critics sniffing the cork. The bidding started low. 200 Gralnath credits, someone chirped. Laughter rippled. A Terran woman, even a whole one, hadn't sold that cheap since the skirmish years. But these were repossessed humans, captured after a mining colony went dark. War spoils, technically, though Earth's ambassador had issued a politely worded death threat over the incident. The auctioneer laughed. One vocal cord slipped out of harmony, like a violin string snapping, and for a second, the whole chamber vibrated with an off-note tension. A higher bid followed. A glintling noble, those sleek reptilian types with jeweled tongues, offered 4,000. Another upped it to 7. But no one noticed the 6th woman. She wasn't part of the lot. She leaned against a ribbed coral column near the rear of the hall, dressed in something that might have once been a military jacket, but now resembled a stitched-together travel blanket. She had boots scuffed from sand, oil stains on her trousers, and an apple in her left hand, half-eaten and browning at the edges. She didn't smile, didn't blink, didn't reach for a weapon. She just watched. Her name was Ellie, and she was Lot 47 FS wife. Technically not legal. Technically not anyone's business. Ellie watched as the 5th girl was sold. The girl glanced toward her once. No signal, no movement, just a flicker of recognition like a match flaring in the dark. Ellie chewed a bite of apple, swallowed without tasting, and stepped forward. "Withdraw her," she said. The auctioneer's voices twisted mid-harmony. He blinked 7 eyes, 2 blinked sideways. "Excuse?" Ellie flicked her ID chip from her belt. It bounced once on the bioresin floor and projected a hard light hologram of a Terran legal clause. "Clause 71 Delta," she said. "The right of reclamation." The chamber gasped. Or whirred. Or vibrated. The jellyfish recoiled, rising a meter in its gelatinous dome. The auctioneer laughed, adjusting his voice cords to a friendlier timbre. "That clause refers to livestock. Property. She's my wife." Someone hissed. Someone else spat. "Impossible," snapped a 4-eyed diplomat from the Exonar Collective. "You're human. So is she." Ellie stepped forward until she stood beneath the main torchlight, framed by shifting banners and nerve fiber silk. She did not look regal. She looked like someone who could kill with a pencil and had once tried. "She was taken during the attack on Dime Station," Ellie said. "You didn't know she had a partner. That's your mistake. Now I'm here to claim her. Or fight for her." The crowd thrilled at that. A whisper of blood sport always quickened the auction's pace. A gladiatorial rite hadn't been performed in this sector for years, not since the time someone lost a head and sued. The auctioneer blinked again. "A duel." "If you insist." A hush fell. In the back row, a cluster of oral diplomats conferred in ultrasonic tones. A betting terminal lit up. A fresh set of odds scrolled across the chamber ceiling. Ellie's name appeared for the first time. Human combatant 47E, the wife. Odds, 812:1. She pocketed the hologram and turned to the girl, being led away by guards. Her name was Mara. She hadn't spoken a word since the capture. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just looked at Ellie, jaw tight. They hadn't married in any official registry. Earth's collapse had made legal proceedings tedious, and galactic law didn't recognize emotional bonds unless declared in a public rite. But Ellie remembered every detail. How Mara's left hand always found Ellie's wrist in the dark, how she memorized the sounds of ships overhead, how she taught Ellie to shoot by listening instead of aiming. Now she was in shackles again, and Ellie was back in a galaxy that didn't believe humans could love without killing for it. An old slat-hack priest shuffled up from the shadows. It looked like a collapsing mushroom in velvet robes and carried the ceremonial blade, a long, double-edged shimmer stone attached to a neural core. When it moved, the blade sang. Ellie didn't flinch. "It has been requested," the auctioneer said, now performing the voice with great ceremony, "that the right of reclamation be honored. The mate challenges the auction. Combat will commence at starlight zenith." The blade was offered. Ellie didn't reach for it. "I have my own," she said, drawing a short blade from her belt. "Simple steel, human-made, dull at the edge from too much use and too little care." The crowd laughed again, and this time it sounded like the air had teeth. Mara was yanked backward by a guard. Ellie's gaze didn't break. "I'll fight for her," she said softly, only to herself. "And I'll win." In the upper galleries, the bookkeepers shifted their focus. 5 other human girls were already gone, sold to various minor houses and merchant clans. But the pattern was odd. They'd been taken without protest. No screams. No sedatives required. And now another was being claimed. Not protested. Claimed. A glintling noble narrowed his eyes. In a private room behind the auction floor, a transmission buzzed through to the Empire's local command node. It read, "Update, Lot 47 series, not compliant. Behavior anomalous. Possible coordinated insertion." No reply came. Outside, Tysarx V's light-filtering membranes shifted. The jellyfish station dimmed, preparing for zenith. Purple glow bathed the chamber. It brought out the scar on Ellie's chin, the one Mara had stitched in a storm shelter back on E42, laughing at how badly Ellie handled pain. Ellie hadn't laughed back then. She didn't now. The crowd was settling, the blades being polished, and the rules recited by a drone with no mouth and excellent rhythm. Ellie tuned it out. She watched Mara, watched the flick of her eyes, the set of her shoulders, the subtle lean to one side that told Ellie she'd twisted her ankle at some point. Probably during capture. It would swell soon. Ellie didn't blink. The Empire didn't know what it had taken. Didn't know who had followed. Didn't know that the girls weren't just captives. They were the sharp end of a spear. Each of them bonded to someone who'd walk through fire, orbit, and law to get them back. Ellie looked around one last time at the jeweled beasts, the rustling robes, the stinking perfume of rotting fruit and pride. And she smiled. Let them think she was a relic. Let them place their bets. The blade was dull. But so was the last knife she'd used to kill a warlord on Eltac 7. The jellyfish station pulsed again, a heartbeat louder now. She rolled her shoulders, spat her apple core on the floor, and stepped forward. "Let's begin," she said. The marriage arena was misnamed. It had nothing to do with love and everything to do with death, ceremonial, sanctioned, and wrapped in gold-threaded law. The entrance was a tunnel of sound. Flutes made from bone, chimes grown from singing crystals, and the rhythmic thump of synthetic drums engineered to mimic the human heartbeat. A touch of mockery in every note. Ellie stood at the threshold, her boots leaving gritty marks on the lacquered floor. The corridor curved like a ribcage, leading into the open belly of the arena. Beyond it, thousands of eyes, some insectoid, some slit-pupiled, some mist-veiled, waited to see the human may die. She wasn't dressed for ceremony. No robes, no armor. Just a patched flight jacket, a faded t-shirt with the word almost barely visible across the chest, and utility pants cinched at the thigh with a nice strap. She'd washed her face in the steam vent behind the medical bay, tied her hair back with a strip of old parachute cord, and ignored the ceremonial guards assigned to escort her in. One of them had offered to carry her weapon. She declined by showing him what the knife could do to his knee joint. Now she stepped into the arena's light. The space unfurled like a metallic flower, circular, with petal-shaped platforms suspended at irregular intervals. Gravity shifted subtly depending on where one stood. Movement had to be calculated, measured. The crowd perched in terraced galleries made from reflective stone that recorded movement and replayed it in slow motion on inner walls. The smell was blood-sweet and sterile. A voice boomed, not from any speaker, but from the arena's core processor, which had been programmed to mimic an ancient war god's thunder. It spoke in trade galactic, but the intonation was unmistakably amused. On this day, under the doctrine of reclamation and the compact of grievance, we recognize a bond claimed between the human female designated Ellie and the auction subject Lot 47F, Mara of Earth. There were scattered laughs. A polite cough from the XNR representative. Ellie stood still. In accordance with the right of combatual petition, the mate shall have her trial, the voice continued, against the chosen champion of the house of Grockendur, to whom the auction was legally bid. The champion shall be Crovthul. A door hissed open across the arena. Crovthul emerged slowly, like a glacier learning to walk. His armor was bone, the real kind, not decorative plating. It creaked with age and pride. 4 arms, 2 eyes glowing red, behind a helmet that looked fused to his skull. Each step cracked the floor beneath him, though the platform adjusted instantly to keep him centered. His species didn't believe in subtlety. Their courting rituals involved bloodletting and fire. Their weddings traditionally ended in duels. Their divorces didn't exist. Crovthul looked at Ellie and did not laugh. His silence was heavier than a death sentence. She blinked slowly. Nice helmet. He did not respond. A drone floated between them, carrying a glowing disc etched with the marriage runes of 10,000 species. It projected the ceremonial contract in red light above their heads. Clause by clause, the stipulations were read aloud by the worm priest officiating. His voice was wet and full of reverence. The contract was binding. If Ellie won, Mara would be released immediately, her bond officially recognized across the empire. If Ellie lost, her remains would be recycled as ceremonial tribute. No burial. No name. Ellie nodded once. The worm priest shuddered in pleasure. Crovthul stepped forward and growled something that didn't translate. His native tongue was guttural and sharp, like bones breaking underwater. The processor hesitated, then offered a sanitized version. She is small, it said. I will not enjoy this. Ellie shrugged. You're not my type either. He moved first. The arena jolted. The floor peeled away in segments, revealing a central platform where gravity warped every 3 seconds. Crovthul lunged with terrifying speed, his bulk a blur. Ellie dropped to one knee, skidding beneath a horizontal strike aimed at her throat. Her shoulder clipped a floating obsidian monolith. Sparks flew. She rolled, narrowly avoiding a downward blow that cracked the monolith in 2. The crowd roared. Ellie knew better than to fight his strength. She used angles. Let him lunge where she had been, not where she was. She struck once, a low slice across the back of his knee, but it barely registered. His skin, beneath the armor, was layered like fossilized bark. She circled, recalibrating. The gravity shifted. Her stomach dipped. Crovthul stomped to stabilize. Ellie jumped just before the next shift and caught the top edge of a floating platform, hauling herself up as his massive fist slammed into empty air. He snarled, a wet, snapping sound. She smiled. From above, she could see the entire arena map. The floor was a logic puzzle in motion, platforms pivoting, kinetic traps embedded in the seams, spikes concealed behind reflective tiles. To the crowd, it was spectacle. To her, it was calculus. She remembered Mara's voice reading to her by flashlight. There's always a pattern, she used to say. You just have to look long enough to see it. Ellie dropped back down, landing light. She pressed 2 fingers against the arena floor, faint vibrations, subtle charges underfoot. She was beginning to see it. A pulse every 7 seconds. A charge build up near the west column. A shift in gravity, rotation favoring. She pivoted and sprinted left. Kravthul turned, barely missing her with a sweep of his lower arm. He adjusted quickly, faster than she expected, and caught her mid-dodge with a backhand that knocked the wind from her chest. She hit the ground hard. Her ribs screamed. Her vision dotted. The crowd gasped. She didn't move. Kravthul approached, certain of victory. His shadow covered her face. She felt the floor vibrate. 1, 2, 3, it was nearly time. He raised his arm. Ellie rolled. Not away, but toward him. As he brought his limb down, she caught it between her elbows and wrenched herself up, planting both boots on his plated thigh. She used the impact to launch herself sideways into the gravity swell. The platform shifted beneath her exactly as she predicted. It hurled her. She flew toward the far column, spinning. As she passed the top of a monolith, she kicked off it, redirecting into a downward arc that sent her blade slicing through one of Kravthul's lower wrists. His roar echoed like collapsing buildings. She landed, skidded, caught herself. Blood, black, smoking, spattered the floor. She didn't smile. He charged again. Not careful this time. Rage changed his gait. He swung wide, wild, relying on brute force. Ellie ducked, stepped inside the arc of his swing, and drove the knife into a chink in his collarbone seam. It didn't go deep. It didn't need to. It sparked. Kravthul staggered. The arena's sensors flared. Blood and voltage sprayed from the wound. His helmet cracked. His knee gave. He dropped, half falling, half deflating. The crowd went silent. The arena's core voice stuttered, unsure. Kravthul collapsed. Ellie stood over him, chest heaving. Blood smeared her forearm. Her blade clattered to the floor. She didn't pick it up. The worm priest slithered forward, uncertain. The terms, Ellie said, her voice raw, are fulfilled. Mara stepped from the shadows of the prisoner's gallery, uncuffed now, untouched. Her expression unreadable. She walked with a slight limp. They didn't embrace. They didn't have to. Ellie turned to the audience. No smile. No gesture. Just a look. She met the gaze of every diplomat, every gambler, every clerk. One by one. Some shrank. Some didn't blink. One vomited politely into a pouch. She didn't speak. But the silence said enough. The humans were not what they seemed. They never had been. The arena lights flickered. The drone tried to begin post-match protocol, but the crowd had already begun to leave. Quietly, uneasily. Not like after a performance. More like after a warning. Ellie waited until Mara reached her side. Then, wordless, they walked out together. The marriage arena watched them go. The blood would be cleaned. The damage repaired. The next duel scheduled. But something had shifted. The humans had come to play by the rules. And they were still winning. The medics tried to keep Ellie down after the fight, but she waved them off with a cracked rib and the kind of glare that transcended species. The worm priest sputtered blessings. A gelatinous administrator offered a towel dipped in rejuvenation gel. She took neither. She just walked off the platform, stiff-legged, jaw clenched, eyes unreadable. She'd won. Not because she was stronger. Not because she was faster. But because she didn't care if she bled to win, and because she could read the arena like a poem set to physics. But the fight wasn't over. Not really. The House of Graukendur wouldn't take the loss quietly. Neither would the buyers who had watched their prize, Mara, slip through their pincers. Reclamation by combat was rarely invoked for a reason. It disrupted the illusion that the Empire's laws were airtight, that humans were docile. That mistake was unraveling. Ellie sat in a private chamber high above the arena, her knees pulled up, her shirt soaked with drying blood. A small band of muscle beneath her left rib twitched. She ignored it. Across from her, Mara paced. The limp in her step had worsened, but she didn't acknowledge it. Their conversation had been short so far. Direct. Unemotional. Ellie had said, "I'm sorry it took this long." Mara had replied, "You came." The silence after was the kind that came with shared history. The kind that didn't require explanation. Now Mara stopped and stared at her. "They're not done." "No. They'll challenge the claim." "Let them." Ellie's voice was low calm, even as pain flared along her side with every breath. The fight had taken its toll, but she hadn't broken, and Mara was no longer in chains. That in Ellie's ledger was a profit. She stood slowly, bones cracking. The chamber lights flickered once, a ripple of power through the station. She caught the shift and narrowed her eyes. Something was coming. A knock came, 3 taps, then a pause. Code. Human. A figure stepped inside. Tall. Spare. Eyes too calm. His name was Rafe. One of the 5. He looked at Ellie, then at Mara. There's a second challenge. Now. Ellie blinked once. Already. They're calling it a clarification of rights. Different arena. No gravity manipulation. Raw combat. No edge for you. Mara stiffened. They're stacking the field. They're scared, Ellie said, reaching for her blade. Rafe's mouth twitched. They should be. Ellie followed him through a winding corridor that smelled like burned honey and rust. Rafe walked with the grace of a predator used to leashing himself in polite company. He wasn't her bondmate. His was one of the others, Iko, maybe, or Tam. But they were all part of the same forgotten project. Human guardians bred not for conquest, but for promise. The 5 girls weren't just wives. They were anchors. Each of them tethered to someone built to kill quietly, live humbly, and never, ever leave a bond broken. The new arena was smaller, colder. No audience, just a circle of officials, and a ring of recorders projecting the fight in real time to interested parties across 5 systems. The floor was solid, flat, untextured. No physics to read. No vectors to exploit. Her opponent this time wasn't a champion. He was an enforcer. Pale, 6-limbed, wearing metal sleeves bolted into his skin. Fast. Brutal. No pretense of sport. His orders were clear. Make it messy. Make it permanent. The worm priest returned, looking shaken this time. He recited the shortened rite with a tremor in his voice. Ellie barely listened. She studied the floor, the light, the seams in the wall. Anything that could offer an edge. Nothing. This one would be different. She adjusted her stance. The enforcer struck first, no warning, just speed. Ellie ducked, felt the wind of his strike slice through the space where her neck had been. He moved like a whip, second strike already midair. She took the blow to the shoulder and used it to spin, landing a knee in his side. He didn't react. Metal plating took the force. He kicked her in the ribs. Something gave. She went down hard, rolled once, came up slow. Pain flared, but her vision stayed sharp. The old training took over. Breathe, blink, step. Don't think. Thinking was for later. The enforcer advanced. Ellie feinted left, then dove forward, low. She scraped her knife along his inner thigh. Sparks. No blood. He was wired for resistance. She danced back, circling. Her lungs burned. The air here was dry reprocessed, and her body was still recovering from the first fight. But her mind wasn't tired. She counted his steps, noticed his turn bias, left shoulder lead, his recovery stance, the twitch before a punch. He was fast but not precise. She could use that. He came again. This time she didn't dodge. She took the hit, straight to the chest, and let herself fall, catching his wrist on the way down. She pulled him with her, twisted mid-fall, and slammed his face into the floor. It dazed him. Not enough. She scrambled up, kicked his side. He staggered. Then he laughed. Ellie didn't. He lunged. She ran. 2 steps. 3. She hit the wall. Jumped. Pushed off. Spun in air. The knife caught him just beneath the chin. The blade cracked. But it went in far enough to hit something important. He froze. Then dropped. Ellie hit the ground in a crouch. Didn't rise. Just watched him twitch, then go still. The silence was immediate. Then one by one, the officials stood. The verdict didn't need to be spoken. It was coded into the silence. Victory. Barely. Ellie rose, shaking. Blood smeared her sleeve. His, not hers this time. She walked out without a word. In the corridor, Rafe waited. He looked at her without expression. They're panicking now. Good. They didn't expect you to survive one. Let alone two. They didn't know me. They will. Ellie leaned against the wall and finally allowed herself to breathe. Every rib hurt. Her lungs felt like fire. But she was still standing. Back in the main chamber, Mara waited with a wrapped cloth in her hands. Inside it, the knife Ellie had dropped in the first arena, cleaned, rewrapped. She held it out. Ellie took it. Their hands brushed. No words. That was enough. Rafe looked between them. There's a vote happening now. Emergency session. Treaty amendments. Human classification may change. Mara raised an eyebrow. To what? Hazardous. Ellie smirked. Rafe nodded. We'll be leaving soon. Quietly. 2 days max. Mara said, the others. Already prepping. The message was sent. To Earth. To everyone. Ellie exhaled, slow and even. The fight wasn't the end. It was the ignition. The Empire had auctioned 5 women. And now 5 husbands were still out there. Waiting. Watching. Choosing when to strike. She touched the hilt of her knife. It felt steady now. Balanced. Mara watched her carefully. You all right? No. Pause. But I'm close. Mara's mouth twitched. You always hit just right. Ellie looked at her. You noticed? I watched every second. Outside, the jellyfish station drifted toward the edge of the system. A fleet waited beyond sensor range. Quiet. Human-built. Unmarked. Ellie and Mara stood in a corridor that smelled of oil and ozone. And somewhere deep inside her, Ellie let herself feel it. Not pride. Not relief. But readiness. Because the auctions weren't over. And neither were they. The diplomatic chamber was a cathedral of polished bone and echo. Every wall shimmered faintly, alive with bioreactive sigils that pulsed to the rhythm of bureaucratic heartbeats. At the center floated a table, oval weightless, suspended by anti-grav nodes and centuries of ceremonial importance. Around it, 23 delegates from the core worlds sat with composed outrage, their robes rustling like insect wings, their various assistants whispering policy updates via neurobeam. The humans had disrupted everything. The auction had been clean, legal, bound in ancient right and galactic trade law. Earth's colonies had forfeited their sovereignty when they lost the war, hadn't they? Their people were cataloged as Class B intellects, sentient, yes, but uncultured, emotional, prone to outbursts, valuable mostly for labor or musical novelty. But now the footage from Tysarx had leaked. All of it, not just the arena fight, which had already set off weeks of memes across the outer colonies, but the second duel, the private one, the fight the Empire hadn't meant to broadcast, the kill that had been too fast, too surgical, too human. And then the message. A short clip. No insignia. No music. Just Ellie's face, blood drying on her collarbone, looking directly into the camera. Next time, she'd said, ask permission. It had gone viral in 17 systems before the sensors could catch it. Now, across 100 light years, the quiet husbands were standing up. The Empire didn't even know their names. The first came silently. A docking bay on Zarthex Prime, quiet and humming with early morning traffic, experienced a sudden loss of pressure and light. When systems came back online 12 minutes later, every security bot was offline, the central server core was melted, and the shipment manifest had one subtle addition. 5 passengers marked as unclaimed cargo. One of them, later confirmed to be Tam, bondmate to Lot 47B, was seen adjusting his cuffs as he walked away from the carnage. He didn't run. He didn't look back. He had retrieved his wife. The second came not with violence, but with a question. On Eurothel, for in the marble halls of the arbitration spires, a trial was underway for the ownership rights of Lot 47C. Her bondmate, Iko, entered the chamber uninvited. No weapon, no escort, just a quiet man in civilian clothes who walked directly to the witness platform and recited, from memory, a 500-year-old Terran wedding vow, in 7 dialects. When asked who had authorized his presence, he simply answered, she did. No one stopped him, not because they couldn't, but because when one of the magistrates leaned forward to challenge him, her nose began to bleed. She collapsed seconds later, Toxic reaction. Bio-encoded vengeance agent. They never found the vial, or any trace of how it was administered. The court ruled in favor of the bondmate. By the time the third husband surfaced, this one breaking into a diplomatic gala on Tyrolean 9 and leaving behind only a single white rose where his wife had once been chained, the panic began to rise. The Corps declared an emergency classification review. Humans were to be recategorized, not as livestock, not as laborers, as threats. Inside the command room of the jellyfish station, Ellie stood with her arms crossed. She'd healed slower than she liked, still wrapped tight in gauze beneath her shirt, and every breath a quiet insult. But she was whole. Mara was beside her, reading through a hacked diplomatic scroll. She no longer wore the glittering silk gown she'd been auctioned in. She'd taken a uniform from one of the outer security staff, loose fit, functional. Still walked with a limp. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. On the main screen, reports flashed. All 5 bondmates had surfaced. All 5 girls were now recovered. And Earth had answered. The message wasn't bluster. No demands. No ultimatum. Just a quiet list. Locations, names, systems. Coordinates of every delegate who had attended the Tysark's auction. Every one of them marked with a red symbol. A pair of interlocked circles. Mara turned. Do you think they'll call for peace? Ellie didn't smile. They already had peace. Behind her, the station trembled slightly. Not an attack. A ship undocking. One of theirs. The vessel was old. Human-built. Underpowered by galactic standards. But its hull was reinforced with alloy Earth never shared, and its engines pulsed with the dark red of borrowed fury. Inside it, Rafe sat at the helm, reading telemetry with the steady gaze of someone who knew exactly how long every heart in the room would keep beating. Beside him sat Tam, chewing on a protein bar like he hadn't just erased 2 defense grids on the way in. Behind them, Iko meditated with his eyes open. 3 of the 5. The rest were on other ships. Different systems. No orders. No hierarchy. Just a shared truth. Their wives had been taken. And the galaxy would pay for the presumption. In the outer orbit of the jellyfish station, a dozen Imperial ships approached in formation. Measured, professional, bristling with the sort of weaponry meant to intimidate. Ellie watched their approach with calm detachment. They'll offer terms. Mara nodded. They'll lie. They always do. The comms chirped. A voice came through, clean, professional, dripping with false courtesy. Human vessel. This is Lord Consul Virex of the 4th Accord. You are in violation of treaty stipulations. Surrender your cargo and prepare for boarding. Ellie tapped the comm. Which part of me is cargo? Silence. Then the voice, slower now. If you leave now, we will overlook your violations. We seek no escalation. We're past seeking. Then you provoke the core worlds at your own peril. Ellie glanced to Mara, then back to the mic. You auctioned 5 women, she said evenly. Without consent. Without cause. We took them back. Quietly. You want to make it louder. No response. Outside, the fleet drifted closer. Ellie looked to Mara. Ready. Mara's answer was a whisper. Always. The first blast came not from the humans, but from the fleet. A warning shot, standard procedure, aimed to disable. But it never landed. The jellyfish station pivoted, faster than its size allowed, and a pulse cannon roared from beneath its belly. An addition made quietly over the past week by Tam and his newly recovered wife. The nearest Imperial cruiser took the hit broadside and spun. Atmosphere vented. Lights flickered. Inside, chaos bloomed. Back in the command room, Ellie didn't flinch. You think they'll send a boarding party? Mara asked. They won't get the chance. Another blast. This one from Iko's ship, now decloaked. It slipped between the fleet lines like a ghost in the dark, its hull cutting clean through the outermost frigate. Ellie stepped to the console. The screen showed a new signature. Earth's reply fleet. No formal declaration. No anthem. Just 15 small ships. 1 per girl. Each armed with precision and fury. The Corps' error hadn't been in underestimating humanity's strength. It had been misunderstanding its silence. Inside the Imperial Fleet's flagship, Lord Consul Virex stood shaking. He was a bureaucrat, a scholar of treaties. He'd never imagined this kind of retaliation. Measured, efficient, personal. He turned to his aide. They were just humans. The aide didn't answer. Back aboard the station, Mara watched as the Imperial ships began to scatter. They weren't designed for war. Not this kind. The human fleet didn't chase. They didn't need to. Ellie folded her arms. They'll retreat, regroup, send diplomats. Mara stepped closer. And Ellie looked at her. Then we start naming the terms. Hours later, the station fell quiet again. The sky outside glowed with fractured ships and drifting lights. Ellie stood at the viewport, sipping lukewarm tea. Mara joined her. They'll remember this, she said. They'll try not to. But they will. Ellie exhaled. Her ribs ached. Her knife sat beside her, cleaned again. She hadn't needed to use it this time. That felt stranger than anything. They never understood, Ellie murmured, that we weren't fighting for vengeance. Mara's voice was soft. What then? Ellie turned. We were fighting for the right to be left alone. Mara smiled. Think they'll learn? Ellie's eyes drifted to the stars, to the empty patches where ships used to be. They'll have to. On 1,000 worlds, across hollowed moons and floating palaces, the footage was played. 5 girls, recovered without fanfare. 5 husbands, never smiling. 1 human voice saying, next time, ask permission. And the galaxy, at last, began to understand what that meant. Not a threat, not a boast, just a fact. One that would not need to be repeated.